What is up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to Coast College Football Pregame Show, episode number 7. A little bit of a dreary Saturday morning here on the East Coast with the hurricane laying rain everywhere. But we're going to be here, as always, to help you kick off your Saturday morning, get you ready for the noon kickoff shows. Another great show planned for you guys today. Previews, picks, College Football Eliminator. There's been some movement. One thing to watch for, as always, we're also going to start something new this week as well. We're going to start our upset pick alert. Maybe a big team or two, see who the guys all think might be on upset alert this week against an opponent that maybe people are looking past. But before we get to all that, I got to introduce the two guys that help steer the ship every week with me. First off, out in Columbus, Ohio, my Buckeye brother from another mother, Mr. Cottrell Simpson. How you feeling this morning, brother?
I feel great. People are talking about our matchup this week. But I will say, it's great to come off of last week. That bye week is so great. Alex, I'm sure you're feeling the love today as well. You don't have to stress about games. You could just watch and just enjoy the camaraderie of college football without any stress. So it's great this Saturday morning.
I will say your matchup this week is one of the ones that, a lot of people are thinking maybe, not so fast on an Ohio State win, but we'll discuss that later. It's obviously going to be one of the games we preview. Alex does have the luxury of having the week off, so introduce my man from the West Coast, Mr. I Black, Alex Elmore. How are you feeling bright and early on the West Coast today? And is the weather better out there than it is here?
Oh, my goodness, yes. Yesterday was 85. Today it's supposed to be like 74. It's summer's last gasp out here on the West Coast, so we're definitely going to enjoy it. Definitely wish the Oregon Ducks were playing in this village today, that's for sure. But I'm feeling as good as another 42-6 win. So that's how I'm feeling this week. I'm going into the bye week. Next week we got Washington. We got 2 weeks to prepare for them. Let's get down to the show and let's see what we got going for us, boys.
I was going to say, your bye week came in a very opportune time, but so did Washington. So you do have the luxury of having a stress-free Saturday today, but it's kind of the calm before the storm for you guys. Next week is a huge week. For Cottrell's Buckeyes as well next week. Next week is going to be a very, very interesting show. But before we can get to that next week, we got to do this week. So we're going to jump right in like we always do. We're going to start from recapping last week. Where do you guys want to start? Let's start with the game that never mind. Cottrell picked it for me, so we're going to do it this way.
I bet.
No, you're good. You're good. No, that's
Cottrell's the captain now. All right.
Yeah, he's the captain now. I have no problem starting with this game. This is a game we talked about. Yeah, this is a game we talked about at length last week. Thinking maybe Kansas could hang around in this. Alex had a couple. Alex thought very highly of his sleeping giant Kansas Jayhawks coming into this game, and then it was not to be, to say the least. Quinn Ewers, another great game. Jonathan Brooks, Aiden Mitchell. Texas just took care of business. Texas looks like a team that is primed to make a run for the college football playoff. I don't know any other two ways to say it. They're playing well on both sides of the ball. Huge game they have coming up this week. We'll talk about that soon, but they're not looking past anybody right now. They came out and they handled their business against a Kansas team. That we knew this was going to kind of be a shootout. Kansas doesn't have a great defense, but they shut their offense down. Texas came to play. Alex, I'll let you go first on this one because you had some Jayhawk love on the show last week, but the birds didn't show up to fly, buddy. What happened?
Look, man, all I'm saying is this. One loss is not the end of their season, but I do feel a bit slighted, as should all of the other bettors in the world, that we did not get a heads up on Jalen Daniels not playing. The commentators of the game during the game were like, we spoke to him yesterday and he gave us no indication he wasn't going to play today. So it was a complete shock to me, and my pick, I wouldn't have been so high on that game if I had known that piece of information, but that's on my bad for not digging a little deeper. But Texas came out. They did not take Kansas lightly. They definitely put it to them. Kansas came out early, hit him back in the mouth. Jason Bean came out, looked solid, had a couple good solid runs on the outside and a good couple screen passes that went for a few yards. But ultimately, that Texas defense just swarmed too fast to the ball. Kansas could not keep up in the second half, and Quinn Ewers did what Quinn Ewers did. And honestly, I was really impressed with how he ran the ball with a 30-yard rushing touchdown he had early in the game. He's really showing off his legs and showing that he's more than one-dimensional, and that's really nice to see.
Cottrell, I mean, you like myself have Texas in the college football playoff at the end of the year. have them be the Big 12 champs. Obviously, you're a big Quinn Ewers guy. Not to say that I'm not, but you obviously have the Ohio State connection to him because that's where he originally committed. But, you've been very high on them, kind of been, ahead of the curve, per se, on Texas this year. What do you think about another dominating performance from the Longhorns?
I mean, I think it just goes to show you kind of what I've been saying about Texas all year in the sense of, this was a tighter game than what that score indicates. If you were watching this game in that third quarter, Kansas was within, one possession of this game, and it looked like they had the opportunity to potentially put Texas on upset alert. Like, their game was going on at the same time as Georgia and Auburn. And I know that's a game that we're not going to talk about, but both teams were really in similar spots at that point in the game. And then, it's kind of like I've been saying, Texas just has this ability where their offense can just flip this switch and put points on the board. And so, you got to give those guys a lot of credit there. Quinn Ewers, obviously, being the captain of that ship, he goes a long way. That Texas team goes as he goes. And then, I mean, even in this game specifically, Xavier Worthy is their clear-cut number one receiver, but Mitchell had a phenomenal game in this one. So even when you're going up against teams later on that try to put, that spotlight on Xavier Worthy and, try to take him away, Quinn Ewers is comfortable going to these other guys as well. So I think that's a great thing for them. And then just being able to run the ball as efficiently as they did. Obviously, Quinn Ewers had the one big one in the game. Jonathan Brooks had a good game as well. So I just think that this was a great win for that Texas team. You face a little bit of adversity, but then you also click on all cylinders of the ball in terms of offense. So I think this was a great tune-up for that matchup against the Oklahoma Sooners that we'll get into a little bit later.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the name you don't see here, which is probably a good thing in a weird way if you're Texas, is Xavier Worthy didn't have a crazy game, and they still put up 40, moved the ball very efficiently, had no problem putting up points on the board or gaining yards, had a bunch of big chunk plays, ran the ball like crazy, which, I think if they continue to ratchet up that run game and then even develop that, the play action game with Quinn Ewers and those guys even more, Texas is dangerous, man. Texas is a dangerous football team. Promise you in December, nobody's going to want to play them. That it's just another dominating performance. They're going to stay where they're going to stay. And, big time matchup for them this weekend, though. I'm very excited to talk about that game in a little bit. I think you're really going to see how good they are this week when they play Oklahoma. So we'll get some more of that later, though. But Captain Phillips, where are we going next?
Well, let's go to
all right. This is where I thought we were going to. Yeah, this is where I wanted to start. But we're going to do it now. Ole Miss 55, LSU 49. I hate to keep beating the dead horse. Brian Kelly just doesn't win big time football games when he has to. You can blame it on the players, you can blame it on the defense. And don't get me wrong, if you watch any of this game, there wasn't a lot of defense played on either side. If you can look at the score here and look at the stats. But LSU should not be playing the level of defense that they're playing right now with the guys they have on that side of the ball. Offense is great. Their offense ranks, I saw this today or earlier this morning. They rank in the top 10 in pretty much every major category in the country offensively. And their defense stinks. No matter what they did, zone, blitz, man, no matter what, Jackson Dart handled his business at home, kept Ole Miss's season alive. 55-49, an absolute track meet of a game. First impressions, guys. LSU, unfortunately, they're going to be brought up when we do Eliminator, but Ole Miss keeps their season alive, keeps hope alive. They still got Alabama. They still got A&M left on the schedule. So technically, they control their own destiny. Big rebound win from them. Or no, they don't have Alabama. They lost Alabama. Sorry. Big rebound win for them, though. Where do you think both these teams go from here?
For me, I think the easy thing to say about LSU, 2 losses. We've seen it before. There's been a precedent set that 2 losses don't get you into the college football playoff. I do think that LSU still has a lot to play for, though. I know they have 2 losses at this point, but they only have 1 loss in the SEC. So if you go through the rest of your schedule and you take care of business and, you beat the teams that potentially are ahead of you, you still have a shot to go to that SEC championship game similar to what they did last year. Now, I know, again, last year they were a 2-loss team. They went up against, the high-powered juggernaut of Georgia, and essentially they had nothing to play for because even if they won that game, they weren't getting into the college football playoff. But I do think an SEC championship game still means something to them, and so I do think you're still going to see LSU fight and try to make their case. I think they're, dead in the water at this point in terms of making the college football playoff, but I can see that LSU team still having some pride about going out to win football games because they do care about that SEC championship. Now, on the other side for Ole Miss, I think Ole Miss is a team that still has everything in front of them. You mentioned that, they have that loss to Bama already, but you run the table, you're a one-loss SEC West champion, you go on, you beat Georgia, you're going to have a pretty compelling case to potentially make the college football playoff, even with, some of these undefeated teams. Obviously, you still need a little bit of help there if you got 4 other conference champions that are undefeated. But at the same time, I think Ole Miss, they showed that they can potentially win a big game. Was it at home? Yes. But I think for that Ole Miss team, to date, they really didn't have that kind of win with Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin's another one who just seems like every time that big game is there, doesn't want to go win it. So I think this is a great win under their belt. And Ole Miss at this point is just going to need a little bit help from others to ultimately try to win that SEC West.
Yeah, you did say it. LSU's SEC championship hopes are not dead yet, and they're going to be playing for their lives the rest of the season. This game was an absolute shootout. This was the Ole Miss that I was hoping to see against Alabama 2 weeks ago when I was talking all high up on Ole Miss beating Alabama. This was the offense I was expecting to see. If we see even half of these numbers, they stop Alabama. So this is absolutely crazy night and day difference between LSU and Alabama's defense. We'll talk about that later down the road. We're not going to dig into that now. Jaden Daniels had a fantastic game. Even when they were down 21-7 after the first quarter, I knew LSU was not out of the game at all. And Jaden Daniels gives you that confidence as an LSU fan. Not that I'm a fan, but if you are a fan, knowing Jaden Daniels is your quarterback, you're always in the game. 414 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. Vintage Jaden Daniels on the ground, 99 yards rushing. Was hoping to get to that triple-digit number, but he didn't get a chance to. He kept his team in play. And honestly, even though his team lost, this is the type of game that ups his Heisman stock, in my opinion. And Jackson Dart, he showed who he was, 389 yards going shot for shot with one of the best offenses in the country. But honestly, there was a total of 4 punts in the game. If you are a fan of defense, this was not the game to watch this last weekend. I promise you that.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point. I believe we all picked Ole Miss to cover, right, last week, or somebody might have actually picked them to win. But I know all 3 of us at least picked them to cover. This is the team, this is the offense, and the creativity and the schemes that I thought we were going to see from Lane Kiffin last week in Tuscaloosa, and we didn't. I said it before. I was very shocked at the game plan they went in there with, that they thought they were going to beat that Alabama defense with. He came out at home and let Jackson Dart just kind of go out and play free and kind of gunsling it, and you see what he's capable of doing. Jackson Dart, he was a very highly recruited kid. I know he's bounced around a little bit, but the talent's always been there. I don't think anybody would argue that. It just, I feel like Ole Miss might have let it, a really big opportunity slip away. They still have a shot. They only have 1 loss. They got A&M still, and they've down beaten LSU. So there's a path there still, but it's a lot harder road to toe for sure than it could have been if they would have played like this last week. But that being said, huge win for Ole Miss and the Rebels. They move on, keep their season alive. I'm very curious with some of the comments that Brian Kelly made. He's kind of done this at Notre Dame before, where he kind of passive aggressively throws his kids under the bus. I hate it, man. I hate it. I just don't know if you're a recruit and you're watching that, like how you'd want to go play for that guy. Like it's just a little nuts for me, man. He's done it before and he did it again last weekend. So I'm really curious to see the effort level for that team for the rest of the year. And I will say this, they lose 4 games or something. I know they signed him to a big deal, but I don't know. I think that seat gets a little bit interesting next year for him. So we will see how these teams fare going forward. Ole Miss running high, stock up. LSU, season over. But we'll get to more of that in just a couple minutes. So, Mr. Cottrell, where are we going next, sir?
We're going out to Boulder.
Whew. All right. Lot to unpack here. Caleb Williams. I don't even know what to say anymore. I mean, he's encroaching quickly into the man playing amongst boy territory. 30 or 40, 400 yards, 6 touchdowns. I think if you would have showed anybody those stats, they'd be like, oh, they probably killed Colorado. And he had to sit on the sidelines and watch an onside kick to Colorado, possibly getting the ball back to get one more possession because USC's defense could not keep Colorado out of the end zone in the second half. This game started off and looked like it was going to kind of be lopsided. USC came out very hot. Colorado kind of stumbled a little bit, not real efficient on offense. Shador took a couple drives to really kind of get his feet under him and get into the game. And, I think they switched their entire offensive game plan at halftime. But they went into half down a bunch. Dion went in. I'm sure had some very choice words for a lot of people. Probably got in the OC's ear about, switch, how they were to call plays. And they came out on fire in the second half and took it to USC. Got all the way back to 48-41 and, had an onside kick, chance to try to recover and go down for the tying score. Made this a game. We all took it as super dog, I believe, so we all hit. This is a twofold question for you guys. I think we all agreed that, this is the effort we thought we were going to get from Colorado after the Oregon game, and they didn't disappoint. Shador Sanders, again, another one-man show. That kid played his ass off, man. I mean, I know a lot of people are very high on Dion. That kid is gaining more fans each and every week by the way he plays. You could tell he's getting banged up. He's hurt. He pops up every time. That kid's a gamer, and he's a skilled gamer. He's not. I'm not saying gamer in a negative way, but that kid's got guts. That kid's got moxie. I love that word. USC's offense might be unstoppable, but their defense is trash. I don't see a way they can play like this the rest of the year with some of the teams that coming up, like Mr. Elmore's Ducks, like the Huskies, and they continue to get away with this. So I guess my question for both you guys going forward would be, how even though Colorado lost, how impressed were you with them, especially the way they rallied? And secondly, how long can USC and Caleb Williams keep this up?
Alex, you're the West Coaster, so
frankly, they can't. I mean, Colorado's rushing offense was one of the worst in the entire nation, and they allowed 193 yards rushing and 4.3 yards per attempt to this Colorado backfield. Okay, I mean, USC won this game, but they did not control the clock well. They did not call plays well. It's like, let's just let Caleb Williams show off. They ran the ball 25 times. When you're up by as much as they were at 1 point, 21 points, you want to start controlling the clock, running the ball, taking over as far as the entire game plan goes, taking over and running the ball down Colorado's throat. They didn't do that. They just want to show off Caleb Williams' arm, and they kept throwing the ball down the field, allowing Colorado to keep getting the ball back with more and more time available on the clock. And that's why this game was able to be as close as it was. And Colorado, on the other hand, they need to work on their play calling when it comes down to the end of games. The Colorado offensive coordinator was calling inside handoffs with 2 minutes or less in the game. You can't be doing that. You got to be doing quick outs. Right? This is not the college football from last year. The clock does not stop. You know what I mean? You got to keep on moving the ball down the field, keep throwing their short passes, which is your bread and butter offense you ran the entire season. I don't understand why they stopped doing that when the game was on the line and they had victory literally in their sights. So, I mean, I'm kind of frustrated with the whole thing. USC, honestly, I think this game could have gone into overtime if Colorado made the right play calls down the stretch.
I agree 100% with you there. And I think that Sean Lewis is a guy who knows better. Obviously, he was a head coach at Kent State, so he knows what it's like to be in that position. He knows what it's like to, call plays down the stretch. And I think the one thing that really, kind of frustrates me as well, Alex, is that you were in a situation where Shedeur had this connection with Omarion Miller, and he was basically just taking over the game. And so I understand that, you want to rely on an onside kick, make sure you're having some efficient offense. But the reason why you got back in the game was because Shedeur Sanders was throwing the ball around the yard, and they were making big plays and, chunk plays at that. The other thing that really frustrates me is that if you know anything about a Sean Lewis offense, he always wants one of the fastest paced teams in the country. And so if that's your bread and butter and that's how you're successful, then why would you go away from that towards the end of the game? So I do think that was a learning experience for those guys. And I think Coach Prime said it best in the locker room, if only we played that well in the first half, we see what kind of game it could have been. And so I think that is important for those guys to know. And, he said it as well. That kind of lets them know that in a sense they can play with anybody. Obviously, we saw that Oregon game, but when you can hold Caleb Williams and that high-powered USC offense to 0 points in the fourth quarter, so that defense really locked up when it mattered most, I think that says a lot about that Colorado team. They just have to play like that more often. And I think the other thing, too, for Colorado that was very impressive and what's going to help them down the road is that once they were down so big at halftime, Deion Sanders looked at his roster, and he started playing some of those true freshmen who were 4- or 5-star kids. Omari Miller is a true freshman, and that was his first time getting in the game, and he went off for 7 catches and 196 yards. And on the other side of the ball, the other highly touted 5-star kid, Cormani McClain, he hadn't been able to get playing time at corner all season, and they got down, and he's like, you know what? We'll throw the kid in there, give him a shot, let him see, what he has. And he played great. He was locking up receivers one-on-one when he had to. So I think that's going to be something that, Colorado looks to in the future. They see what they have. And you figure, Omari and Miller on one side on offense, Travis Hunter on the other side. And then on defense, Travis Hunter on one side, and you got Cormani McClain on the other. I think Colorado has exactly what they need to take even that next step. Now, obviously, the offensive line has to play better. They have to run the ball better. But I think Colorado is finding some of those other playmakers outside of just Shedeur and Travis Hunter. So they're in a great spot. And just real quick to answer your other question, what USC is doing right now, not sustainable. Caleb Williams can drop 40 on anybody he pleases. But at some point, your defense is going to have to get you a stop to win a football game. You never know if Caleb Williams, has to come up limp and he misses a series or something like that. That could be the difference in winning and losing a football game. So you got to have some sort of other sustainable pieces on that team, and they just don't. So I don't think it's sustainable at all.
I agree with both you guys. You guys both brought up a couple of really great points, and I think they were spot on. I hope that, and I don't think this is going to be an issue, but I really hope Colorado continues to play this way and Deion keeps these kids motivated, even though they have 2 losses now. Because I think there's a shot they can end up in a pretty decent bowl game, which would be, for the kids that stayed and stuck it out and, kind of stayed loyal to the program and got on the wagon with Deion per se. I think it'd be a great way to send them out. It'd be, another great showing for recruiting to see them in a bowl game. And for USC, man, again, it's fun to watch them play offense. It's equally as fun as it is to watch them play offense. It's the equal amount depressing to watch them play defense. Like they are. There is no doubt in my mind that there's like JUCO teams that would absolutely could probably score 20, 24 points on USC's defense right now. Like they're bad, like bad. And obviously Colorado is a very good offense. Like we all know that, but the odds of them, I think, getting through an Oregon offense, a Washington offense, possibly Utah, they got to play Oregon State, I think as well. I think the odds of them playing defense like that against all 4 or 5 of those teams and coming out with a win every time, I think is just slim and none. So it's going to be really curious to see where, how USC improves, if at all, defensively going forward. But let's move on. Let's go to the last game, which I have to say, if you stayed up and watched it, I know I was, Cottrell was. Yep, it absolutely did. This was listen, I'm gonna say it because I'm gonna tell you exactly what it reminded me of. It reminded me of the game the week before with Notre Dame against Ohio State. Two really good defenses, two really good offenses, back and forth matchup, a lot of strategy, a lot of really big plays at big times in regards to getting each of these offenses off the field. I gained a ton of respect for Riley Leonard. That kid is another one. I don't use the word gamer, in a derogatory fashion, saying he's not a skilled player. He's everything that he was hyped up to be. That Duke team is really freaking good, really good. And I'll be quite honest. I'll let you guys hop in here. They're better than I thought they were. I think there was really a decent part of me that thought they kind of caught Clemson opening week, and Clemson was maybe sleepwalking through it a little bit, and they just caught Clemson at the right time. And then I watched Clemson play 2 more times, and I was like, all right, Clemson's really just not that good. Duke's good. Duke's a good football team. They're a really good football team. Notre Dame saves their season. Sam Hartman, Estime, man, that kid is a load. That is just not a kid I would want to have to tackle in the fourth quarter after playing against them all night. That kid is tough. He's physical. Has really good vision for a running back, especially a big guy that you would think would kind of be a bruiser. He's not. Notre Dame lives to see another week, keep their season alive. Hate to see what happened to Riley Leonard at the end of the game. That sucked. That was the worst part of it for me. But I think Duke's legit. I think Duke, how do you guys, where do you guys figure Duke being, how do you see them factoring in to the ACC race at the end of the year? Because I honestly think they're a contender. And Notre Dame, they still have that loss. Obviously, it's a loss that looks really, really good right now. It's the team ranked 4th in the country. How do we still feel about, their aspirations going forward, especially with the schedule they have coming up? They really don't have any easy games coming up. So, again, kind of a twofold thing. Let me know what what you thought about the game. And then, both Duke and Notre Dame going forward. You guys, jump in. Somebody start talking, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, the game, it was honestly a really good game. Duke is better than I thought they were going to be for sure. Sam Hartman did not look great. Throwing for 50%, 15 for 30 passing, 222 yards. I know it says 22 on there, but it was 222. He has just not looked what I was hoping he would look like the last 2 weeks against arguably the two of the 3 biggest games of the season. Last week against Ohio State, and this week he did not leave a lot to be desired as well. Aldrich Estime doing what he does best, carrying this team, 2 touchdowns, and Mitchell Evans really showing out. It's nice to see a receiver step up for Sam Hartman to go to the 134 yards receiving. Duke honestly had this game won, I thought. Riley Leonard did exactly what I said last week, where if he wanted to keep this game close and compete, he needed to use his legs, just like he did against Clemson. He came out, he showed that, rushing for 88 yards. But ultimately, those 2 turnovers, including on the very last possession, did kill them. But honestly, it was a great game to watch. And as far as the ACC goes, here in 2 weeks, they got Florida State. And then the week after that, they got Louisville, both on the road. So we're going to see kind of what this team's made of. And, when it comes down to those games, they play North Carolina State this week. I hope that they'll take care of business. And then next week, we got a great matchup between them and Florida State. But ultimately, I do see them as a 3-loss team in the ACC. I don't think I have them making the ACC championship game this year.
And then for me, I would say that, for Duke, I'm going to, echo the same sentiments that you guys had. Definitely better than I thought. I definitely thought that Notre Dame would come into this game, bounce back. I thought they would cover. Ultimately, they did. It took a 2-point conversion at the end to cover, but, they covered. So got to give them credit there.
I was sweating.
I will say, that Duke Blue Devils team, man, I know it hurts for them because they had the lead late in that game, and Notre Dame went down and scored towards the end. And I almost feel like had Notre Dame not played Ohio State the week before, Duke would have probably won this football game. I feel like Notre Dame got that experience. They know what it felt like to lose that late in a game and really just have a win, in their grasp and ultimately, fold. I thought that really played a big part in how that Notre Dame team looked down the stretch. Mitchell Evans looks like basically, baby Grump from last year in Michael Mayer. So him, being on the scene and just being that reliable target for Sam Hartman was big. Obviously, with Estime, carrying the rock as much as he did, that was big for him as well. I'm not really a big fan of how Notre Dame utilizes their running backs. Then bringing in 4 or 5 different running backs in rotation doesn't make sense to me, especially if you have a guy like, Audric Estime, who is a bruiser and, can really get into that kind of rhythm. But, I mean, to each its own. But I definitely think that Notre Dame team, they showed some fight in that game. No pun intended with them being the Fighting Irish here. But I definitely think they're still going to be, one of those tough teams to beat that we're going to ultimately see in a couple of weeks here how the committee views them even being just that one-loss team, especially with a showdown against USC coming up in the very near future.
So to comment on the Estime thing, and I think you're seeing it, in other teams, and I'm going to bring this up because I think you saw, Michigan's doing it this year with Blake and Donovan. They've had the luxury of obviously getting them out of the game. Like neither one of them is. I think Blake has 1 carry in the fourth quarter so far. Donovan has none. I think they're trying to keep these kids fresh, to last longer in the season. Michigan's made a concerted effort to do it. I've seen Oregon pull guys, a little bit earlier than maybe normal. Travion, when they've had a chance, they've rested him. You got to make sure these kids are healthy in week 10 so they can continue to do what they're doing. That being said, 18 carries, I think is a little bit, I don't think you have to give the kid the ball 30 times in pretty much a must-win game to keep your season, afloat and having any kind of chance to do anything. I thought 18 was a little bit light. So I do agree with you there. I think just a lot of these coaches are starting to follow the model. If you can get these kids out of the game or give them rest, do it and try to keep them fresher to make sure they're on the field later on in the season. I just think it's something that's starting to kind of catch on and you're seeing it across the country. But
I will say, though, just to kind of, I guess, argue against that is Notre Dame's going to have plenty of opportunity against other teams where these guys don't have to play in that fourth quarter. Against Ohio State, against Duke, those are going to be 2 of your 3 biggest games. Obviously USC coming up as well. Every other game, if you want to give them 15 carries because you don't need them, I'm all for that. In this game, this was the Audric Estime game, in my opinion, especially when you saw Sam Hartman was struggling as much as he was.
I don't disagree with you. Especially in the situation I don't want to say they put themselves in, but with them losing to Ohio State, every game has, a way higher, magnification of what it's going to mean to the rest of their season. This year, this upcoming, later on today, they don't have a week off yet. They got to play Louisville. I think they have Stanford after that, which would be one where I think they could probably rest some kids and, rotate other kids in. And I think they have USC after that. If I believe that's their schedule. I would have to look it up. But, I look at it like you do, Cottrell. If you hold these kids back and then you end up losing, what the hell did you end up holding them back for? Because now your season's over. So,
yep.
But they survived. Great game. I'm looking forward to, honest to God, I'm looking forward to that Duke game with Florida State now. Me and Cottrell have talked about it a little bit. I'm hoping Riley Leonard could play. If he does, he's not going to be 100%. I know he's going to try to do everything he can to get back on the field for that game, but it's going to be tough. Also got to give. I don't know if you guys saw it too at the end of that game. Sam Hartman literally stayed on the field and waited for him to come out of the tent to shake his hand and congratulate him. So that was a super classy move from in my opinion. Sam Hartman,
sure.
He looks the part, man. He didn't have a great game Saturday, but up until then, he's kind of been everything advertised that that Notre Dame's needed. So
hey, he showed up when he won him the game.
He did.
I do have a Notre Dame schedule update. This week they got Louisville, which we'll talk about later, and then next week they have USC.
It is next week. Okay.
It's next week.
All right. So, I mean, this is kind of their gauntlet then. I mean, this is, Louisville shouldn't be ranked, but we'll talk about that later. But, this is every game is a must win for them. So, I mean, survive and advance another week. That's what you got to do. So, they did that, and they got another big one later on today. So, but that is it for recaps for week 6. So, we are now on to kind of, one of the more fun aspects of the show, and it's never a dull moment when the college football eliminator's up. So, Cottrell, let's see it. Ooh, LSU. How does that feel? They are donezo.
That hurts.
Yep.
TCU, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Utah, A&M, Bama, Notre Dame, Duke, all hanging by a thread. And I mean, the fun part about this, we keep saying it, you got a lot of eliminator games coming up soon. Between some of these teams are playing each other.
Today you're going to have movement. Red River rivalry.
Yeah,
one of those teams is going over.
One of those teams
versus Alabama. We're going to have another X on the board. Like this is why you play the game.
And then next week, either the Nittany Lions or the Buckeyes are moving, and either the Huskies or the Ducks are moving.
Yep.
Notre Dame's got USC. I mean, listen, man, I'm glad we did this because I think it makes the show more interesting every single week because there's never a week where everything just stays status quo, and I think that's the best part of it. So,
what were you going to say, Alex?
Here's what I'm saying, though. We're eventually going to have an argument at one of these shows where an Oregon's going to beat a Washington, and Oklahoma's going to beat a Texas or something along that line. And we're going to have an argument where there's going to start being one-loss teams on the contender side. Facts. So I'm just looking forward to that matchup where, like, if Washington loses, maybe they don't move over. Maybe there's not as much movement as we think just because they lose that game. I mean, we'll see. I'm excited for the weeks coming up. I mean, Washington, Oregon, USC, those are all playing each other. Texas, Oklahoma this weekend. I mean, it's Michigan, Ohio State later this year. I mean, it's just going to be madness coming up, and I cannot wait.
I think the one thing too is that, I mean, we still obviously, we're gonna talk about it and figure out how we're gonna move these teams over. But like you mentioned, I think if we're gonna do it, if Washington, let's say Washington loses to Oregon, I'll keep you happy, Alex. Don't attack me this fine Saturday morning. Let's say Washington loses to Oregon. If Washington goes over to that pretender side, I think it would have to take them beating a USC team, or even at this point still, an undefeated Washington State team who is probably on the outside looking in to get into that club. Maybe they're going to be here in the coming weeks. But I think it takes a big win to move you back over. The only case that I don't see that, though, is with this, and we'll talk about it here soon, Bama versus Texas A&M. I don't know how you guys feel about that game. I feel like even if Bama wins that game, it's like, you kind of were supposed to. They have their backup quarterback. And then for A&M, it's like if you beat Bama, it's kind of on the other side. It's like, yeah, great job, you beat Bama, but you got a backup quarterback, so I don't know if you're really contenders or not.
I don't think that game is enough to move either one of them back over. Like, for instance, I'll say this. Like, let's just because we've talked about this scenario. Say if Penn State goes to Ohio State next week and loses, Penn State's going to move. 3 weeks after that, when Michigan comes to town, they beat Michigan. That's probably enough to move them back over. It's going to take something like, solid like that. Like you said, if Washington loses to Oregon, but then, wins 2 other tough games and then beats USC, that probably puts Washington firmly back on the other, brings them back to the contender side. So that's the beauty of this. It's really easy to move to the right, but you gotta earn it to get back to the left. So. But it's doable. We're fair people. We're all very unbiased, unobjectionable, journalists on this show. So if you earn it, we will let you back on the other side. I mean, again, Notre Dame beats USC. I think we'd have to take a hard look about moving them back over.
For sure.
So
for sure.
All I know is we got a great slate of games today, but next week, and the week after, it gets brutal. We're getting into the meat of, where teams really start to show who they are and separate themselves, and you really do see who's for real and who's not. So we've had a lot of fun with this. I get so much feedback on this. They love it that it's, and again, I got to give a shout out to Cottrell. Cottrell does this. I do not. We discuss who's moving and all that stuff, but the time to put the graphic together and all that stuff, that is Mr. Cottrell. So sending all that praise his way. But we like this. We've had fun with this, from the get-go, and it's something all three of us wanted to do. So it's great. It's great. And, I'm glad we got like 8 more weeks of it to go. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
And I'm just happy that Oregon State never ended up on the contenders side. I'm just saying I'm very happy I was able to prevent that from happening, because I'm pretty sure one of y'all threw their name out there at some point, and I'm glad we didn't add them.
We did. We said outside the club. We had them outside the club.
We did.
Get in. The nice thing is that it's like 3:30. Club closed at 3. It's 3:30. We don't even have anybody outside the club at this point because everyone played their way off that list. Duke, they played their way onto the contender side. Oklahoma, they played their way onto the contender side. And Colorado, they're at 2 losses now, so they're not even pretenders at this point. So, it's the club's at capacity. We're shut down for the night, but maybe next week we'll have some other folks waiting to get in.
Let's find out.
Yep. So that is the Eliminator for the week. We're gonna move right into one big thing. One thing to watch for. Alex has the bye week this week. Oregon is taking some duly deserved time off. They're gonna rest up this week. Ohio State, Maryland. Some people are very confident. Some people are very confident it's gonna be a close game. Some people might even say somebody might be right for an upset, but maybe we'll get into that later. Maybe we won't. We'll see. But Michigan travels to Minnesota this weekend, or later tonight, sorry. Another night game for Michigan. Little Brown Jug game. Been going on for a long time. I'll go first on this one, get mine out of the way, because, if we play well, we should handle business. And then I'll kick it to Cottrell, because Cottrell, has more of the more high profile games later today. So for me, literally just continue what you were doing last week. Run the ball, get JJ out of the pocket, move them, be efficient, take your shots when you want to, let the defense continue to eat, slow down the Minnesota defense, and I think they're going to be just fine. They're a 3 touchdown point favorite. I think the game will somewhere right along that, in that range as well. So Michigan just got to show up, play a really smart game, and I think everything will be just fine. Cottrell, you got a little bit more of a, maybe not, you might not think so, but a lot of people do. A little bit more of a trickier game against Maryland. Very good offense. A surprisingly good defense, but, we're not quite sure yet. They really haven't played anybody that's going to test them. Ohio State's going to do that. So what are you looking for today? What's the one big key for the Ohio State versus Maryland game later today?
So I know this is a game that we're going to preview, so I just feel like at this point it's probably going to be the time to do it. Alex has the bye, and then, of course, I'm going to give you my breakdown about how I feel about the game. So I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are as well. I think the big thing for me is that, Ohio State is coming off of a bye, and they're already battle-tested. They went up against a good Notre Dame team on the road, and they slowed down Sam Hartman, who had, lit the world on fire. And I think, you look at this Maryland team, I can 100% understand why the hype is there. I think the spread being as high as it is kind of, gives you a reason to, take a little bit more attention onto that game, because it's like, hey, Maryland's looked great all season. How are they 20-point underdogs in this one? But I also think that the point that you mentioned, Maryland hasn't played anyone so far this year. Their best win is against Michigan State at this point, and we know how much of a disaster that program is right now. And so I think for me, especially with the way that the Ohio State defense is playing, there's only 3 teams in the country that are giving up 10 points or less. And that's going to be your 3 big dogs in the Big Ten with Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. So I think defensively, they're going to have Talia Tagovailoa fighting for his life back there. I think they are going to get after him. And the other thing, too, is that I think last season, Maryland played Ohio State phenomenal. And that was the game right before Michigan. And so those guys, they are not going to forget that. I think they're going to be focused, and I think they are going to take care of business pretty handily. I think the spread's probably right where it needs to be. I think Maryland probably covers, but I don't think they cover by much. I think it has a 17-point, 21-point Ohio State win written all over it.
All right. I mean, listen, I can't blame you for being confident. I can't. I would probably take the same approach as well. When we play Maryland this year, it actually worries me a little bit because it's sandwiched in between two big games. We have to go to Maryland. So that being
That's
said,
different though. If it was like that, that'd be different.
It would be different. We played in the week before we play you guys. So,
and I'm sure if you were coming off of a bye going up against Maryland too, you'd be like, oh no, we're fine.
True. Well, Alex, you have free reign here, so you can kind of pick one thing. Whatever. Honestly, whatever you want. Dealer's choice here, buddy. Lay it on us.
No, I just want to talk a little bit. I'm going to keep it Oregon Duck related. I'm excited to see what they have against ready for Washington next week. The last 2 weeks combined, they have not allowed 300 yards or through the air, facing Shedeur Sanders, and Stanford ran a couple QBs out there last week that we're probably never going to hear the names of again. But that secondary is looking phenomenal, and I can't wait for that battle against Michael Penix Jr. next week. And honestly, I was talking to Cottrell yesterday in the group chat, talking about how I actually see more than one upset happening this week. And so I'm excited to see which ones play out in my favor, compared to, my picks for later. But I'm excited to see some good football this weekend with no sweat coming down my brow because my team is chilling at home watching the same games I am.
All right, brothers. Well, here we go, boys. Week 6. Couple really big games today. National title implications, possibly. Definitely conference championships. We're going to start with this one. I didn't even want to do this game because I don't even want to give Brian Kelly any more airtime, but we're going to do it anyway. We're going to go LSU at Missouri. LSU is a 5.5-point favorite on the road. Missouri's ranked. I don't know if they should be, but they are. A little SEC bias there probably. LSU just got to play better defense. It's that simple. I'll put it to you this way. If they play defense 50% better than they did last week, they'll beat Missouri going away today. And I mean that. Their offense has been damn near unstoppable. I think they probably have no issue getting into the high 30s, low 40s against Missouri. The key to me, I'm going to keep this breakdown really simple, let you guys jump in. If they tackle better and just don't play dumb defense, they play half intelligent defense, I think this game's a W for them, and I think it's a comfortable W. That's all they have to do. Let Jay Daniels go out and play. Defense, just get off the bus this game. That's all you have to do. Get off the bus. If you get off the bus, put your helmet on and walk on the field and just play a half-decent game, LSU should win by 10+ easy. That's how I see the game. And I really think it's that simple. And that's not me slighting Missouri. So if we have any Missouri fans listening to the show, that's not a slight against you. LSU's offense is just that good. Their defense can be that bad, though. I think Missouri will be at home. They'll put up a fight. They gave Georgia the scare of their lives last year in that stadium. But I think if LSU does what LSU should do, I think they win the game comfortably. Cottrell, what do you think?
So I'm kind of on the same boat as you. I think LSU should win this game pretty comfortably. Two things kind of worry me though. Missouri at this point, you said, should they be ranked? Should they not be ranked? I think they have a good win under their belt already with the Kansas State win from earlier this year. And the other thing is that with LSU having 2 losses, I think this is going to be the game that really shows you what LSU team is going to show up the rest of the year. I know I said earlier, they still have a lot to play for with the SEC championship game still being at stake here. But, Jayden Daniels, I'm sure he didn't go to LSU to just try and win a SEC championship. He went to LSU with all intentions of trying to be a Heisman Trophy finalist and ultimately try to bring home a national championship. LSU didn't bring in Brian Kelly to bring home SEC championships. They brought him in to win a national championship. So I want to see how a lot of those guys respond in this game. It's it could be a huge letdown game for them. They could be down in the dumps, or they could say, hey, we still got a lot to play for. We're a better team here, and let's prove that. And I do think it is going to be the latter there. I think LSU is going to go out with something to prove. I think it can be a situation where they may start off a little bit slow. You know, you mentioned last year's game with Missouri. Missouri fans are intense, and they are going to be there, and that place is going to be rocking. So I think LSU could start off a little bit slow, similar to what you saw last week, them going to Ole Miss. But I got Jaden Daniels having another phenomenal game. I think this game will have you'll see Malik Neighbors back kind of on the map again this game. I think he goes off for 100 plus. I think Mizzou keeps that game tight. I believe it's within one possession, but I don't ever think there's a time where Mizzou has the ball and has a chance to go win the football game.
Well, whatever the over-under is, go over. Trust me, this is going to be a not blowout. This is going to be a high-scoring game just like last week against Ole Miss. Who is Brady Cook? Y'all know who Brady Cook is? That dude has 1,468 passing yards this year, 11 TDs, no interceptions. In the last 3 games, he's thrown for over 1,100 yards. This dude is hitting on all cylinders right now. Okay, this dude is going to light the LSU secondary up, especially if they played like they did last week with Jackson Dart. But here is Missouri's one little weakness that they have is they really only have one receiver. All right, Luther Burden, 644 yards receiving, 5 touchdowns. The next closest receiver is 400 yards of receiving behind him in stats. So he's literally like their one and only go-to guy. Okay, and on the secondary, Missouri needs to keep the ball on the ground against let me rephrase that. Missouri needs to force LSU to keep the ball on the ground and keep the ball and keep the clock running in order to keep this game close. Missouri's defense only has 4 interceptions this season, but 3 of them are by Chris Abrams-Drain, and I expect him to be on Malik Neighbors all night trying to limit his success through the air. Jaden Daniels, he's going to do what he does. Had over 500 total yards last week, and I expect him to do much of the same this week. But here's the main difference and why I see LSU winning this game, even though it's going to be a high-scoring affair, is that Missouri doesn't have a QB like Jackson Dart. Brady Cook is going to throw the ball around the yard, but he's not going to be able to run outside of the pocket and make things happen when pressured. He's going to get sacked. He's going to be taken down for losses, throwing the ball away. And that's how LSU is going to ultimately win this game and get that 1 or 2 extra stops. And that's because Brady Cook doesn't have that strength of his legs that Jackson Dart does. And so far, LSU's weakness I've seen with mobile quarterbacks, they struggle quite a bit with getting that offense off the field. And with SEC still in play for LSU, I do expect them to come out and really take care of business. I do have LSU covering the 5.5 spread that it is, but I do have this game being like 60-48. It's going to be like a heavily scoring game.
Good Lord.
I know, but
All
hey, last week they scored 104 points combined with Ole Miss, and Brady Cook's got that kind of arm talent.
Not wrong. All right, let's go Alabama. Going to College Station, Texas A&M, Nick Saban versus Jimbo Fisher. No love lost there. And they said they made up. I don't know if I believe that. Alabama -2.5 on the road in a building where if Nick Saban kind of had a house of horrors, it would be College Station. I think Alabama is begging to get beat again. I know we keep saying that, and I'll tell you this: I think I'm gonna give Cottrell his flowers here again. I'm getting tired of doing it, but I'm gonna keep doing it. There was one person that said A&M might look better with their backup quarterback than they did with their starter Connor Wigman, and I gotta say it, gotta admit that offense looked more potent and more fluid last week than it had all year. Now they get a home game. They got Alabama, Big Ben, Nick Saban, assuming Jalen Monroe is going to start, coming to town. Coach Fisher gets another chance. Just get one more up on Nick Saban once again. Cottrell, I'm going to let you go last on this one, because I think I know where you're going. I want to hear what Mr. West Coast has to say on this one first.
You're right. Well, here we go. So I'm gonna give a little hate action towards Jalen Milroe. All right. Yes, he did earn that starting job, but I don't think he's good enough to be an Alabama starter. This season he had 3 touchdown passes against Middle Tennessee State, and since then he's gone 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. An Alabama quarterback needs to take care of the ball better against Power 5 defenses. He's just not getting the job done. The only reason Alabama does not have more than 1 loss right now is because of that defense. They're led by Dallas Turner, 5.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. Dude is an absolute animal this year. Their defense is allowing less than 300 yards per game, and that's the first time that Alabama's defense has done that since 2017. And you know how good that defense was. And if you don't, Google. They held Ole Miss to 10 points. Ole Miss dropped 55 points next week against LSU, and that kind of shows the kind of offense that Ole Miss has and what Alabama was able to limit them to. So that really is the only reason why Alabama is still kind of in the discussions for the college football playoff right now. On the flip side, we got Texas A&M. They're 2-point underdogs in this game. But here's what I love to see is they've only allowed 96 rushing yards per game this season, and they're averaging 4 sacks per game. They're going to get Jalen Milroe out of the pocket, force him to make some tough throws, throw the ball away, and if they can force more 3rd and longs, Alabama has not converted on, I think they're 22% conversion on 3rd and 6 or longer this season. And A&M is holding their opponents to 23% on 3rd down in general. So that defense is really going to have to step up, and I think that they will this week against Alabama. The last 2 games, they've had 209 rushing yards versus Auburn and 208 versus Arkansas. Since Max Johnson has taken over, they've kind of helped him kind of ease into the offense by not putting too much pressure on his shoulders and allowing the running backs to really kind of take over the game and control the line of scrimmage. And they got that 2-headed monster with Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels, each averaging over 5.5 yards per carry for Texas A&M. And the one thing that Max Johnson really brings to the table is that he shows what he could do last week with his legs. 9 rushes for 57 yards. With Alabama being a 2-point favorites, I don't see it that way. I have Texas A&M by a touchdown.
Ooh, Cottrell. I know you are. You probably have strong feelings on this one, so I'm gonna let you close this game out.
Yeah, so I mean, I think here, obviously, you guys know I picked before the season Texas A&M to be my team to cover the SEC West. I thought that they were going to be a team that would be really led by that defense. I think the offensive side of the ball with Wegman, they definitely looked good. And I will say, I didn't necessarily think they would be better without Wegman, but I thought Max Johnson, him being a vet, playing in the SEC before, I thought he'd be able to control that ship as well. And I thought they would still be, a very competitive team. Alex, you mentioned a great point that I definitely wanted to get into. Texas A&M is, top 2 in the country in terms of sacks. That's how good that defense has been. And I know you look at the Miami game and you say, well, Tyler Van Dyke made them look like, a junior college team. And that's all fine and dandy. I 100% agree with you there. But at the same time, I think that A&M team has kind of learned from that. That was their first, true big game. It was on the road. And, they didn't look great. And, I got to give Miami all the credit in the world there. But I think Texas A&M is definitely rebounded from that. And I said this on Wire to Wire as well. I think Texas A&M quietly has one of the top 10 receiving core in the country. Evan Stewart is an absolute monster, 5-star kid from last year's class. I think he's going to go and be a first-round pick next year. He's been in and out of the lineup so far with injuries, but when he's on the field, I think he is, one of the top talents in the country. They also have Anaya Smith on the team as well. I think he's another guy who's really talented and can definitely be a playmaker for that A&M team. And, I think Max Johnson is just going to take care of the ball, something that Jalen Milroe hasn't statistically, done. I think this is going to look a lot like that Texas game. I think Nick Saban is going to try and keep the train on wheels on Jalen Milroe. But that A&M defense is going to be too good for you to just play vanilla on offense and expect to move the ball down the field and score. So I think Jalen Milroe is going to have to make plays with his legs, and that's ultimately going to be how Bama, puts points up on the board. But I'm with you, Alex. I got A&M winning this game, and I think they win by, a touchdown as well. I think A&M really slows down that Bama team, and you're going to see that red X through the Alabama Crimson Tide, going into week 7, which is absolutely bananas.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, Cottrell.
I'm going to agree with both you guys as well. I think A&M gets it done. I don't think they win by a touchdown, though. I do think it's a close game. I think it's probably, like a field goal, maybe 3-4 points. Alabama maybe has the ball, with the ability to tie the game or even go ahead. I think they're in it to the very end, but I think Texas A&M holds serve at home against Alabama, and I do think it'll be Saban's second loss, and I know Cottrell's gonna take pleasure in putting the red X over the old scripted A for Eliminator next week. So all three of us agree. So like I always say, go bet your house on Alabama because they'll probably win by 20. So
that's not going to happen, man. When we agree, when we've been agreeing lately, that is true. Happening. I will say that's
true.
That's not the narrative anymore.
No, we got the pure vibe juju on this show. So
I will say the other thing too. We kind of said it before the season started. Alabama was going to be a team that I thought at the end of the year, I thought their schedule was primed for 3, maybe 4 losses. You lose here at College Station, I think the wheels fall
off. Can't say I won't be interested to watch Nick Saban lose his mind. I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't. I'm not going to like it. Let's switch gears. Let's go over to Kentucky. Talk about a team we already talked about a couple minutes ago, quite a bit. Number 10, Notre Dame, at number 25, Louisville. I'm going to get this out of the way now. Louisville should not be ranked. They have no business being ranked. They haven't beat anybody good enough to even be considered to be ranked. They're ranked 25th strictly because of the old guy group on, all the guys that vote on the AP, to squeeze them in and get Notre Dame bias, another ranked win on their resume for the end of the year. Don't fool yourselves. I'm not saying Louisville stinks. Don't get me wrong. They just shouldn't be ranked. They have no business being ranked. But that being said, Notre Dame's coming to town, 6.5-point spread favorite. Is there any mental fatigue here? And I think that's the biggest question for me because I know Louisville's been pretty explosive against a bunch of kind of, substandard teams. Their defense still hasn't looked great, but they've gotten away with it because they're just not playing high-powered offensive teams. They haven't played anybody like Team A or obviously what Sam Hartman's capable of doing. I think if you look at this game strictly on paper and what these players can do, if they go out and play that game, I think Notre Dame wins easily. Is there any mental fatigue of coming off the Ohio State loss, having to come back at Duke and now go back on the road again to Louisville? Hostile environment later today. It's tonight, actually. It's a night game. Louisville, like that, it's. I don't think you think of it as one of the toughest places to play in the country, and it's definitely not. But it's not easy. Like it's. I think it's still Papa John Stadium. Actually, I'm not sure. But if it's not, if I'm, I'll get corrected if I'm not. But their fans will show up. Like that place is going to be packed tonight. How do you see it going? Can Duke stay sharp? Can they fight off elimination one more week against, what's looking like an upstart Louisville team, but I still think they're a year away. I like Notre Dame to win comfortably. That's my gut. I think you really start to see the maturity of the team, and I think you really start to see Marcus Freeman kind of really find his footing as a coach, and these kids believe in him, and they believe in what they're saying, and I think you're seeing that translate on the field. I truly believe that. So I think Notre Dame wins. I think they win by 10 or more. I think it's a good game. I think Notre Dame just pulls away a little bit at the end. So, Cottrell, how do you see it going down? Is Notre Dame on upset alert?
I really hate to beat a dead horse, and I hate agreeing with you guys as much as I have been, but I definitely believe that Notre Dame is in a spot that I think they're comfortable at this point. They had a game go the wrong way against a good Ohio State team. They had a game go the right way against a good Duke team. And I think in this one, I agree with what you said. I think Louisville they're a good team, but Duke and Ohio State are a completely different level. Say what you want to about the rankings. I do think there could have been some other teams that, arguably could have had that 25 spot. But, similar to how I feel about Maryland, I feel really the same way about this Louisville team. They've looked great so far. They haven't played anybody though, and I think even with Notre Dame traveling in this game, they've already had to go travel, and play in Durham last week. So I think this is a team that's going to be comfortable being on the road. They're going to be comfortable in that hostile environment, and I think this is going to be a Sam Hartman bounce back game. Louisville doesn't have the same caliber defense that Ohio State or Duke did. I think you're going to see Sam Hartman be very comfortable, complete about 65-70% of his passes. And I think that Notre Dame offense is going to be very fluid. And on the flip side of things, I think Louisville's offense is pretty vanilla at this point. I know I said the term earlier, but I do think it's vanilla. They've looked great under Jeff Brom so far in his first year there, but I think this is a game where, they're going to be too big for their boots here. And I think Notre Dame covers, and I don't think this game is particularly close.
I don't know how you can say Louisville's we're not going to agree on this one. I don't see how you can say Louisville's offense is vanilla. They're averaging over 400. They're averaging 494 yards of total offense, 301 through the air, and almost just under 200 on the ground. I don't know if you guys know Jack Plummer. He's the quarterback of Louisville. He's got something to say today, okay? He's got 11 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. His potential, as he showed earlier this year against Boston College, he threw for 388 yards, 5 touchdowns, and absolutely took care of a Boston College defense that gave Florida State fits. So I'm not really looking at this game as everyone else is looking at. Everyone's looking at, Notre Dame's history versus Louisville, not so much of a historic program. But I'm looking at today in Louisville, Jawar Jordan last week only had 32 rushing yards. He's averaging 7.7 yards per carry this year, and I look for him to get back on track against that Notre Dame front. And Sam Hartman, if you asked me at the beginning of this year, I would say Notre Dame would probably be 21-point favorites of this game at the start of the year. The last 2 weeks, Sam Hartman has not impressed me. He has not showed up to his caliber of play against Ohio State or Duke. 0 passing touchdowns, no interceptions granted, but he's not shown me what I expect a Notre Dame quarterback with as much hype as he has shown me. He hasn't shown me. And, they really need to score points. They've only averaged 17.5 points against the 2 ranked teams they played this year. And Louisville is coming in, and their defense isn't as bad as you are making them seem to be. I mean, they're only allowing 109 yards per game on the ground. And with Notre Dame averaging 124, I think it's going to be a battle in the trenches. I think this game goes the under, and I think Louisville does cover that 6.5.
So I think my one kind of counterpoint to you, Alex, is that, again, I know I mentioned it with the Maryland-Ohio State game. I do think it matters who you play. Obviously, you can only play who's in front of you. But I think with that Louisville team, Jack Plummer has definitely looked good so far. And I didn't mean that their offense is vanilla as a slight to him. I just meant that I don't think they're necessarily scheming guys open and doing great things schematically. I just think they've literally just been so much better than everyone that they've played so far. And, there is something about that Jack Plummer and Jeff Brom connection. Obviously, he's a grad transfer from Purdue, and so he knows that Jeff Brom system. But I just feel like against Notre Dame, a team that is battle tested at this point, they slowed down Marvin Harrison Jr., so I definitely think that this Notre Dame team is going to go into Louisville, and I think they're going to fight like hell. And I think this game gets ugly.
Yeah, I mean, you did say they did eliminate Marvin Harrison Jr., and Louisville has a very similar offense to the fact where they kind of have – Ohio State's got 2 great receivers, but Louisville's got 1, and his name is Jamari Thrash. He's got over 400 yards receiving this year and 5 touchdowns. He's averaging 20 yards per catch. If Notre Dame wants to stay in this game and wants to make your guys' ideas of what this game doesn't look like come true, they need to eliminate him from the passing game and make them one-dimensional on the ground.
All right, so we are Alex. I feel like Alex. We just found out that Alex is an undercover Louisville fan. He's starting to get like Gene. He's starting to add teams to the ledger now.
Whoa! I just think that this week is going to have a lot of upsets that we don't see coming. I think we're going to move a lot more teams into the Eliminator, off the Eliminator this week, and I'm excited. I've been waiting for upset Saturday all year, and I think this weekend is the first one we're going to see.
Well, speaking of Gene, we'll go to his game next. The number 20 Kentucky Wildcats, fresh off a beating last week. travel to the number 1 team in the land, Georgia Bulldogs. 3:30 kick, Athens, Georgia. Again, might be a game you hear come up here in our new segment after we're done previews here. Not saying for sure. I'm just saying maybe. I think Kentucky, put a lot of people on notice last week. They do this every couple years. They kind of have a sneaky good team, kind of get a big win. They kind of never get over the hump. They never can win the really big one. Don't get it twisted. This is the big one. If they can go to Georgia and beat the Bulldogs, who, if we're being honest, not saying they don't have a flip they could switch, because I do not believe we've seen their best football yet. So I'm not dragging Georgia by any means, but they haven't been impressive at all. I don't think anybody thought they were going to be as good as they were the last 2 years, and I think that's fair. I think with what what those teams have lost the last 2 years in draft picks, it's a little unrealistic to think this team was going to be as good as those two teams, the two-time defending national championship teams. But they seem like they're ready to get beat, and that's the weird part to me. It almost feels like they're going out and playing, and if somebody really steps up and takes it to us, they're going to beat us. Is that this week? Is it Kentucky? Flying high, Wildcats, Bulldogs. Cottrell, what do you got?
So I'm glad you went to me first, because I think this game, for me at least, it's very cut and dry. Kentucky runs the ball very well. Ray Davis having an incredible season so far. They have Devin Leary. He is very experienced. Obviously, he was NC State's quarterback last year. They have the coach in Stoops that's been there for a while and knows what it's like to coach in these big games. With all that said, I'm still taking Georgia. I don't think they cover because the offense has just not been where it needs to be to cover a spread like that. But I do think that this Georgia football team, at least to me, they've looked exactly how I thought they would look pretty much all season. I told you guys last week that I thought Auburn would have been a tough game for them, because that was really the first time they won on the road this season. And I thought Auburn was a team that was better. They were an unranked team, but I thought they've been playing better to just not really get any notice in that game. As far as Kentucky goes, it feels like they do this every single year. They go out, they win some games, they start off 4-0, 5-0, they get ranked, they go up against one of the heavy hitters in the SEC, and then they lose, and then you never hear about them again. I think it's just the more things change, the more they stay the same here. And I got Georgia winning. I think they ultimately win by maybe 10, 13 points. I think Kentucky covers barely, but I don't think this game is ever in question. I don't see Devin Leary being the guy to put Georgia on upset alert on the road.
Yeah, I mean, Kentucky last week had a fantastic game against Florida, and if I'm Kentucky, I am copying that game plan and I'm pasting it on the Georgia tab, because if they can continue running the ball last week they had 19 pass attempts versus 36 rush attempts. So that's 2-1 for every single play that they ran. 9.1 yards per carry against that Florida defense. Last week, on the flip side, Georgia played Auburn, ended up winning that game by 7. But here is what Auburn did in that game that gave them a lot of success. Their passing game wasn't it, I'll tell you that. Auburn ran the ball 2/3 of their plays last week. Georgia allowed 219 yards, 5.1 yards per carry. So literally, if Kentucky can just copy and paste their game plan against Florida, they're going to have the same kind of success that Auburn has. The key difference here is, can Kentucky's defense eliminate Georgia's offense in that big play capability of Brock Bowers? As we all know, he had 157 yards receiving and a 40-yarder for the win at the end of the game. And Carson Beck looked really impressive last week, scoring on the last 3 drives of the game to get his team the lead and ultimately the win last week. And their 22-game win streak is on the line. And lately, streaks have been breaking. So I think that this 22-game win streak is going to be on the line here soon. Will it be today? I'm not sure. I am picking this game, so I'm not going to give too much information. But Kentucky hasn't beat Georgia since 2009. So 14 years of heartache and losses, Georgia squad in Kentucky. And if they want to win this game, I need Ray Davis to have a huge game, just like he did last week. 26 carries, 280 yards, 4 total touchdowns. And, Cottrell, you were bringing up Devin Leary. I'm not very high on Devin Leary personally. He's not the guy that's going to go out there and win you games. Last week in a huge game against Florida, 9 for 19 for 69 yards. I know that Ray Davis was kind of running all over that defense. They didn't really need to throw the ball too much. When you're running the ball that well, it tends to set up the pass, and they weren't able to capitalize on those opportunities when they really needed to pass the ball. So I'm looking for Kentucky to keep it on the ground, keep the game close, and then we'll see my pick later on in the show.
I will say, I do just want to throw one small thing in there. Alex, everything you said, 100% spot on in terms of the game plan, running the football, translating against Georgia. There's one small thing that kind of was left out there, and that's Auburn did a great job of getting their quarterback involved in those rushing attacks as well. And Devin Leary, if Devin Leary goes off and he has 70 yards or 80 yards against that Georgia team, you might as well write the ticket now. Kentucky won that football game. I just don't see in any scenario you're going to have Devin Leary getting out there running the read and just putting that Georgia defense in those kind of odds. So I'm interested to see your pick later, but I definitely just wanted to add that little caveat in as well.
I'm going to add this. Devin Leary was a kid that just couldn't stay healthy the last 2 years, had a lot of fanfare. His stock was pretty high on two NC State teams that had very high expectations the last 2 years. Last year, me and Cottrell both of us picked him to go to the ACC championship game last year. And he got hurt week 4 and really never got back on the field. He is capable of big moments. I'm not saying one's going to happen Saturday. That moment is not out of reach for him, though. He can throw the ball. Like Cottrell said, he can run. I don't know how anxious he's going to be to take off against that defense, but if they have to, I don't think the number is 70 or 80. But I think if he runs the ball 4 or 5 times for 40, 50 yards and just keeps Georgia that much, off balance, I think it's very interesting. I think it's a very interesting game this weekend in Athens, later today. I really do. I think it's not saying Georgia's going to lose. I think there's a better shot at Kentucky covering than they don't. I think if Devin Leary can keep this game at least close enough to, give him the opportunity to make some plays, and that Kentucky offense is two-dimensional, not just one, not just running the ball, I kind of lean towards Cottrell. Like I think there's a shot you see something wild happen. Not saying it's going to happen. I'm not picking it. It's not one of my game picks. Push comes to shove. If I had to make a choice, I would say Georgia wins. I don't think they cover, though. I don't. I think, I think Kentucky has a chance to really make this an interesting football game around 4 o'clock today. So to the co-main event we go. Kind of a game with a similar feeling depending on who you ask. Cottrell is not going to agree with it, but some people feel the same way about Maryland, Ohio State, as a lot of people feel about Kentucky and Georgia. Baby Tua, I feel like he's been in college forever at this point now too. He's getting up there with Bo Nix and all them. Very kind of spread, kind of hybrid offense. The difference for Maryland this year is the defense has been playing a lot better than it had the last couple of years. Maryland's always been able to score points, really haven't been able to stop anybody. They're very confident in their defense this year. A lot of people think Ohio State, might be looking past this game. The dreaded trap game designation because they have Penn State coming to town next weekend. And I also think a lot of people think that Maryland's offense can pose a lot of problems for Ohio State's defense. Cottrell, you are obviously the resident Ohio State expert on this show. So I will let you go first on this one. I know who you're picking. Just tell me why. And
I really don't have much to say about this game. I know I mentioned it a lot earlier in the one thing to watch. And I just think the one big thing for Ohio State, well, two big things. I think you have to find a way to get your playmakers involved. Coming off of a bye, the offense needs to look sharp. Defense can literally just play how they've played pretty much the entire season so far. You're perfectly fine. What Jim Knowles did going into this offseason was we have to find a way to limit the big play. And they've done that, and then some so far this season. Against Maryland, if you make them drive the ball down the field every single possession, you're going to be in a situation where I think you can force Talia to make some bad decisions. And then on the flip side of it, I think what they really needed to work on during the bye week is finding ways to get their playmakers the ball. Notre Dame did a phenomenal job against Marvin Harrison Jr. They had him bracketed pretty much the entire game, and when he was in one-on-one coverage, can't remember the guy's name from Notre Dame, but he was playing great all night long, and it was the Emeka Egbuka show. I think you got to find ways to get Marvin Harrison Jr. the ball. Everybody in the country knows he's the best receiver in college football. That doesn't matter. Throw the ball his direction. If you have to go get in bunch formations to get them singled up on some guys, do it. Get your ball in your playmakers' hands, and you take care of business rather easily in the shoot. So I got Ohio State winning. Like I said earlier, I think it's a 17 and a 20-point ball game, and I don't think Ohio State's ever really in any danger.
Alex, Buckeyes on upset alert or no?
Well, they're gonna show up and pick them. I'm gonna tell you that right now. And what I say about this game is probably going to lead you in the direction that I'm going to go for Pick'em. But 19.5-point favorites is Ohio State right now. The over-under is at 57.5. And I'm just going to say how it is. Ohio State is one dropped pick away from being the number 12 team in the country. They should have one loss on their docket already in that Notre Dame game. However, Notre Dame's the players too busy eating popcorn on the sidelines to catch that ball. Obviously, that's a joke. But Ohio State's going to try to control the clock. They cannot keep up with Maryland's offense head-to-head. Maryland is number one offense in the Big Ten. Control, you can shake your head all you want, but there's a reason why Maryland is number one offense in the Big Ten, regardless of who
because they haven't played anybody.
Until they do. And that's what we're going to have this week. All right, Tagovailoa has 1,464 passing yards, 13 TDs this season. Last week, he is looking prime and ready for Ohio State upset. 352 yards, 5 touchdowns. Indiana's defense isn't Ohio State's defense, but they also are not terrible at all. Maryland is 9th in pass defense. You were mentioning Marvin Harrison Jr. and Egbuka have got to get involved this week. Where Maryland is 9th in pass defense ranking, led by Bo Braid, who's a safety. They have 8 interceptions this season and only allowed 5 passing touchdowns. By the end of the game, I'm seeing those numbers at 10 interceptions and 6 passing touchdowns. That's how I see it going, with Kyle McCord throwing for 2 picks, 1 touchdown. Travion Henderson has to be the answer for Ohio State in this game, or this game is going to be a one-sided affair. I'm not saying Maryland is going to win by more than 3 points, but they're definitely covering. I'm thinking this game comes down to the fourth quarter, and Nick Saban is going to wish that he had this Tagovailoa leading his team this year. And I'll tell you what, the record would be a lot different.
Alex throwing shade the Buckeyes way.
Look, man, Maryland is the most underrated team in the country. The fact that they are undefeated and have the number 1 offense in the Big Ten and they do not have a ranking number next to their name is absolutely criminal, and someone should be thrown in jail. All right, Roman Hemby is on a tear right now. That's a guy who you do not hear a lot. Maryland, all you hear about is Tagovailoa and his passing offense. But Roman Hemby on the backside is their running back. He's got 309 yards, averaging 5 yards per carry. Maryland is definitely going to show out a lot more than Notre Dame did against this OSU defense. And Ohio State's going to put up some numbers too. But I do have this game. You know what? I can't tell you because I'm picking them. I want to get it out, but I'm going to hold it in for a little longer.
So I do want to say here, I want everybody to remember this moment right here, this fine Saturday morning. Because if Ohio State goes out there and they put a spanking on that Maryland team, I don't want you to come on here next week and tell me how they were unranked and how they hadn't played anybody and Ohio State did what they were supposed to do. I want everybody to recognize it as a good win, another good win on their schedule, and that it should be viewed as a ranked win. I just want that to be out there and, for everybody to know.
Just and then when Maryland beats Ohio State, you're going to be putting the Maryland logo on the contender side just to make me happy.
I'll do that. I've got to move Ohio State over. That's perfectly fine. They go up against Penn State the following week, so they got a chance to make it back up here. But I'm just saying, I know it's a 19.5-point spread right now, but Alex is telling me we got to be on upset alert right now. So once they take care of anything about, they hadn't played anybody and all that, I'm just saying.
Ohio State only has 5 sacks this season. If they don't get Tagovailoa and get at least 3 sacks in this game, he's going to pick apart that defense. I've seen it all year so far, what he's done against other teams. He's going to do the same exact thing. So if you guys don't get penetration and get at least 2 to 3 sacks alone in this game, we're going to see.
The one thing, though, to counter that is Ohio State, you're right. They have not been getting after the quarterback in terms of sacks, but they've been taking care of business everywhere else in terms of defense. So if that means the quarterback's getting the ball out their hands and they're making bad decisions, hey, so be it. You hold teams to 10 points a game every single game. I don't care how many sacks you get because you're taking care of business defensively.
Let me just say this. My last argument is Maryland is better than that Notre Dame team. I'm saying that right now. And by the end of this year, you guys are all going to be on the same page as me. So just take the note down, remember it, and next week when we're talking, I don't want to hear about how, Kyle McCord didn't have a good game or Travion didn't run the ball well. I want you all to be like, Maryland is legit. They won, and we're going to move on, all right?
Alex, you had me to the very end till you went and said that. You had me. I had the Kool-Aid in the cup in my hand. I was getting ready to drink it. I was looking forward to drinking it and seeing what it tasted like.
And you had to throw that shit out.
And then I'm
just saying, hot takes coming in all day off the grill. All right.
And then,
it's also super early over here on the West Coast, so I might still be partially asleep. Who knows?
Alex, I do appreciate it. You gave me plenty of time to get my Michael Penix Jr. jersey here before next Saturday.
Wow.
It's going to be, purple. I can't wait, I'm just saying.
Bill, you got to send me a Michigan jersey.
I got you.
I love when we don't agree, though. Honestly, like you said earlier, when we all agree, it tends to happen. But I swear, when we don't agree, it just makes for some fun football watching. I tell you that.
I just want Michigan not to be the first team to lose out of the 3 of our teams. That's all. That's all I really want to happen. Because I know whoever it's going to be that next Saturday show is going to be brutal. But all right, you guys are split. I think Ohio State's going to get it done. I think it is probably – I'll say what I said on Wired Wire on Wednesday. When these spreads originally came out, I had a number in my head of where I thought it was going to be, which I thought was appropriate for Ohio State. And then when I saw the actual number, I thought the actual number was a little bit kind of ridiculous. So I think there's a better chance than not that Maryland covers. I do think Ohio State wins at home, though. Alex has got all his stats, and some of it I don't disagree with. At the same time, that pass defense has not had to cover anybody like Marvin Harrison Jr. and company. It's a different animal. So I think if they keep Kyle McCord upright and he doesn't regress magically, during a bye week, then I think Ohio State will come out with the W. So
I don't know, man. I think Bo Braid, the safety from Maryland, is going to have something to say about that, man. He's definitely going to be playing on Sundays, and with him roaming as a safety, Kyle McCord's going to have to make some definitive throws, and we'll see if he can. We'll see what he can do out there.
We shall see. We shall see in a few hours. So let's go to the main event, the game that's really going to kick off the day here in about an hour, a little less than an hour. The Red River rivalry. It's not a word. Oklahoma Sooners, Texas Longhorns. Big 12 clash of the leaders. Huge college football implications. Talked about Texas earlier. Oklahoma's kind of one of the, kind of a team we really haven't talked about that much on the show so far. Not that, we haven't said anything bad about them, but we really haven't talked about them that much. I think we previewed one of their games. That's it. Dylan Gabriel and company look very impressive. Their offense is putting up points at a very, very high rate comparable to Texas, and the defense is miles ahead of where it was last year. They lost 6 games last year, and 5 of their 6 games they lost last year, they lost by, 6 points or less. The one outlier to that was the 49-0 loss to the Texas Longhorns in the Red River rivalry last year. Do you guys see it going different this year? I said this on Wednesday, and I'm gonna lead. I'll lead you guys with this point, and then you guys can come in and give me your takes. This is one of the rivalries that notoriously gives you big upsets. Last year with standing, there was pretty much 8 or 9 games in a row between these two teams that were incredible. You've had teams ranked as high as 2 or 3 face the other team and lose, and lose by a decent amount. Cottrell and Gene brought up a great point on Wednesday that a lot of these kids from that Oklahoma team that lost 49-0 are still on this roster. There is no way their last year in the Big 12, last Red River game they play in, they want to leave with a bad taste in their mouth. There's revenge on their mind. Dylan Gabriel did not play last year. He is going to play this year. He's putting up great numbers. He's up there with everybody. Bo, Penix, JJ, everybody. Like he's top 10 in everything. He's having a great season. How do you guys see the game playing out? Does Texas get the W and pretty much, I don't want to say sleepwalk, but I think we can all agree if Texas is going to lose a game, this is the game they're going to lose. If you believe in that. I, for one, do. I'm not saying Oklahoma's going to win, but I think Oklahoma is the only team in the Big 12 capable of beating Texas. I think it's going to be a great game. No, I think it's going to be a great game. I hate that they're kicking this game at 11 o'clock. Well, it'll actually be 10 o'clock local time. It's going to be a noon kick for us. It's great you start the day off with that, but Alex, I'll let you go first.
Yeah. I mean, Quinn Ewers has really impressed me this year. Cottrell, you've been high on him all season. I've always liked Quinn Ewers, but he's never been in my top echelon of quarterbacks. I thought he was going to be a solid QB, and this year he's really kind of stepped up and showed me what he's made of. In the last couple of games, he has a 30 and a 29-yard rushing touchdown. I said earlier in the show that he's really impressed me with the use of his legs and his the willingness to know when to tuck it and run and when to kind of wait for that pass to open up. And he's really kind of matured into his game, and I'm excited to see where he goes the rest of the season. And it's nice seeing that the rushing attack hasn't really hurt too much since Bijan Robinson went to the NFL. Jonathan Brooks, he's 597 yards on the ground, 5 touchdowns, averaging just under 7 yards per carry. The first 2 games of the season, he got off to a really slow start, only 109 combined yards in weeks 1 and 2. And since then, he's averaging 162 yards per game. So as long as the offensive line, which has only allowed 9 sacks this season, can keep pushing up. I can't talk today. Can keep pushing the defensive line around. I have Jonathan Brooks having another really big game. In Oklahoma, they're only averaging 2 sacks per game. They have 9 sacks total on the season. Their defensive front is not getting a lot of penetration, which is really going to open up that run game for Texas. A lot of people think that Oklahoma's run defense is a lot better than they are. Their averages and their numbers are kind of screwed up by their first game with Arkansas State, where they only allowed 48 runs, and this kind of skewed their numbers just a little bit. But against Iowa State last week, they allowed 150 yards on the ground and 5.6 yards per carry. They got to tighten that up if they have any chance of keeping up and beating Texas this week. And kind of like Shally said earlier, Dylan Gabriel, he did not play in the game last year. What was it? You said the score was 49-0, 42-0?
49, I think.
Yeah, 49-0. I don't think Dylan Gabriel makes a 49-point difference on the score sheet. And I do have Texas kind of taking care of business. And it's going to be a little bit of a high-scoring game. But ultimately, Jonathan Brooks in that run game is going to kind of ultimately open up that passing attack of Quinn Ewers and Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy and all those guys. And it's just too much firepower for Oklahoma to handle. I think it is a much closer game, but Texas does cover.
So I think you made a great point there. I'm with you. I don't think Dylan Gabriel makes a 49-point difference there. One thing I do want to give you some more pushback with, the game last week against Iowa State, yes, Iowa State did have some success on the ground in that game, but I also think that Oklahoma was in a situation where that game was actually close at one point. Like at one point, that game was a 1-point game. It was 21-20, and Oklahoma looked like they could potentially do an upset alert. But then they went and routed off 29 unanswered, and, that game was ultimately a blowout. So I do think a lot of, what you saw in that game, I think there's 2 ways that you can look at it. One on the good side, one on the bad side. But I think in this game specifically, I think you have to throw all of that out the window. What you've seen so far to this point from both teams, I think you throw it all out the window because this specific game is different. I think you saw beforehand, even a couple years ago, Oklahoma had Spencer Rattler and they had Caleb Williams right behind him. And Spencer Rattler was supposed to go out there. Oklahoma was supposed to blow Texas out of the water in that game. And it took Caleb Williams taking over the reins and leading this, historical comeback for Oklahoma to win that game. And so I don't think you can just go based off of what you've seen so far this year or even how the matchup went last year, because I think these teams, they're going to look completely different in this game. I will say for Texas, they have the luxury of having a great opponent so far this season. They traveled to Tuscaloosa and they knocked off Alabama. So they're going to have no issue getting up for this game against Oklahoma. To this point, Oklahoma is still, not battle tested. They've looked great so far this year. Ultimately, in this game, I think it's going to come down to whose defense makes the play first. I know Big 12 is known for just letting all these offenses go, have 500-plus yards and score 40-plus points. I think this game is going to be decided by whose defense makes that play, forces the other quarterback either into a really bad throw or a really bad possession where they get them off the field and 3 and out, and that's the difference maker in the game. And the defense I trust more at this point is the one led by Brent Venables. I think Texas is the better team, but like Shally said, if Texas is going to lose one game at all this season, I think it is going to be this one. It's hard to go undefeated in college football. You don't see it every year. When it's all said and done, you only end up with like 2, maybe 3, and in a really good year, 4 undefeated teams. I think Texas is going to be another team that has a 1 in the loss column, but I think they rebound and they're going to get their revenge in that Big 12 championship game. But I got Oklahoma winning a tight one. I don't know if it's a walk-off field goal. I don't know if it's a situation where they're already up 3 or maybe up a touchdown and Dylan Gabriel gets a first down to keep the ball out of the hands of Quinn Ewers. But I think Oklahoma, they have that sour taste in their mouth, and they're going to take care of business in the Cotton Bowl.
All right. I mean, I think it's going to be a great game to kick off the slate here in a little while. They always play the game early. It's been a great 3:30 game. I know we talked about that earlier on Wednesday as well. So we are done with previews. Those are all the best games on the slate for this afternoon. We're gonna go right into pick 'em. Oh no, sorry, no, that's wrong. We've kind of already talked about it. We need everybody to put their upset alert specials on record now, though. Alex, I will go with you. Who do you realistically think has a chance of getting upset today?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, my upset alert. I mean, it's got to keep it simple. I have Washington State versus UCLA. UCLA is 3.5-point favorites right now over Washington State. And I don't see no way that Cam Ward doesn't throw for over 400 yards today against a UCLA secondary. And I have Washington State winning outright on that game.
For what it's worth, I think that spread is telling me everything I need to know. I think UCLA's pissed about losing to Utah, and I think the Cinderella story of Washington State is no longer. But I 100% can see where you're coming from, Alex. Like, I can see that game easily going either way. For me, one game that I kind of got my eye on that, honestly, there's so many good games this week. I probably won't tune into this one, but it does have a little piece of my heart with it being some action here. I got the Buffalo Bulls being 3-point dogs at home to Central Michigan. I 100% understand why Central Michigan is the favorite here. This is a rather down year for Buffalo, but I do think you have to respect, this being a conference game, and Central Michigan is traveling to Buffalo. Buffalo plays phenomenal at home, and I definitely think they're going to be in, for this game, and I think they're going to get up for it. And I think Buffalo actually wins this game outright, and so I think that 3-point spread against Buffalo and they're at home is a little bit deceiving, although they're at that 1-4 record right now.
All right. I am going up to Laramie for Wyoming versus Fresno State. Fresno State is ranked 25th in the country, going to Wyoming. They're a 5.5-point favorite. Wyoming started the year making a lot of noise. They beat Texas Tech week 1. Texas Tech was a kind of a dark horse pick for a lot of people to compete for a Big 12 title. They've beaten Appalachian State. They were tied with Texas 10-10 going into the fourth quarter. Wyoming can play, and they're 5.5-point dogs on their home turf. I like Wyoming to give Fresno State everything it can handle and possibly win the game outright. I think Wyoming is kind of a low-key, under-the-radar team. They already have 4 wins. They're going to be bowl eligible this year. They might win that conference. So that is a big game up in Laramie later on today. Tonight, actually, it's a later kick. So it is going to be – I think there's a very good chance that Wyoming can win that football game. So that being said, we're going to real pick 'em. Cottrell's going to put the records up for you.
Got some super dog love last week. Like you said, man, all 3 of us picked Colorado. We saw what happened.
We did. I'll go first. I'll let Cottrell go second, and then we'll give the stage to Alex, because me and Cottrell have, if you watch both shows, me and Cottrell already gave our picks, so I already have a goddamn L on the board thanks to Liberty just playing like doo-doo last night. So I'll start with that game. I took Liberty minus 19.5 at home against Sam Houston State, who is new to FBS. They've gotten boat raced by everybody they've played this year. Apparently not last night, though. Liberty played kind of a sloppy game. Didn't play great. Sam Houston, I think, played very well. Hats off to those kids, even if they lost. But they definitely covered the spread. So that is one loss for me going into to the Saturday slate already. That's why you don't pick Thursday night Thursday night game. So pay attention at home, kids. The other 2 games I'm going to go with. I already talked about the one, Notre Dame minus 5.5 at Louisville. Again, I think if Notre Dame shows up and plays their B game, I think they comfortably cover the spread. So I'm going Notre Dame minus 6.5 at Louisville, 5.5, 6.5. I'll take it both ways. Doesn't matter. The other game I'm going to pick, Ole Miss at home minus 10.5 against Arkansas. Arkansas is awful this year. They can't stop anybody. I think Ole Miss finally turned the page on what they can expect offensively, and kind of kicked it into high gear and put up a bunch of points last week. I think they stay hot and they're confident now. I think they do the same thing this week against a very bad Arkansas team. So Ole Miss minus 10.5. I will take those points there. I think they cover. For my super dog, kind of already hinted at this. I don't think Maryland wins a football game. I don't. And the reason I'm picking this game is, as much as I would love to, get my little rib in at Cottrell, that has nothing to do with it either. I think Maryland's a good football team. And like I said, my gut when this spread came out, I thought it was going to be somewhere between 12.5, 13.5. I just strictly think 19.5 is too much. That's almost 3 touchdowns. I think Ohio State's a better football team. I don't think they're 3 touchdowns better than Maryland this year. I just don't. I'm going with my gut on this one. So I'll take my 19.5 points with Maryland and see where they get me. So those are my 3 picks for the week, and plus my super dog.
So my picks for this week, again, like Shally mentioned, we did give a lot of these picks over on Wire to Wire as well. One I like, I'll go right same game that Bill was kind of leaving off with. Arkansas at Ole Miss. I like the under in that one. I do think Ole Miss wins rather comfortably in that one, but I like the under 63.5 a little bit more. I think Arkansas is in a spot where they've kind of been playing above their head to this point. KJ Jefferson is a good athlete, and he can lead Arkansas to scoring drives. But at the same time, I also believe that Ole Miss is in a spot where they're not going to give up 31, 35 points, to that Arkansas team, like how LSU let that Arkansas team do to them. And so I think this is a game where Ole Miss, they take care of business. I could see it being a 31 to 17, 31-14 game. but I think you're pretty safe with that under 63.5 there. Second game I like, one we kind of touched on already as well. I like Texas A&M plus that. It's down to 2 now, so +2 at home versus Bama. I think they take care of business there, and so I think they win the game outright. But of course, I'll take the 2 points to cover the spread there. Last game I like Kansas. -2.5 at home versus UCF. UCF's coming off that insane game last week against Baylor, and Kansas is coming off a tough loss against Texas. I do believe that Jalen Daniels will try to play in this game. I'm still very confused why he didn't play last game and why it was so hidden from everyone. But even if he doesn't play, I do think that Kansas team will be up for that game because, again, even with that loss to Texas, someone else is going to have a loss in that Big 12 after this afternoon here. And so Kansas still has high hopes of potentially getting to a Big 12 championship game. So I like Kansas to cover that 2.5 point spread at home. And then my super dog for the week, I got UMass at home plus 19.5 versus Toledo. I said it on Wire to Wire, and I'll say it again here today. Toledo is a team that plays down to their level of competition. If they're playing a really good team, they're going to play up to that level and try to beat them. They played Illinois earlier this year, and that was within a 2-point game. And then you got games like last week where Bill picked them to beat the snot out of Northern Illinois, and they almost lost that game. And so that tells you everything you need to know about the Toledo team. UMass is a bad football program for sure, but I think with them being at home and just the way that Toledo ultimately goes about playing some of these teams, I think they're going to cover that 19.5 point spread. So those are my picks for the week.
All right. Well, I'm going to keep this short, sweet. We can wrap this up and get ready to watch some football. I'm also going to start with a game that Bill also chose, the Fresno State versus Wyoming game. However, I'm going to go the reverse. I'm taking Fresno State -5.5 against Wyoming. The reason is Wyoming's primary offense is through their running attack. And Fresno State's rushing defense is ranked in the top 15 in the country, only allowing 94 yards per game, if I remember my stats off the top of my head. And I think Wyoming's not going to be able to run the ball against Fresno State. Fresno State's going to take care of business, -5.5. After that, we have a game we talked about earlier with Kentucky versus Georgia. I have Kentucky running the ball just like they did against Florida last week, keeping this game close. I didn't put Georgia on upset alert just because Georgia is Georgia and you got Brock Bowers. You never know what could happen. But I do have Kentucky coming in plus 14.5. And my third game before I go with Superdog is going to be Colorado, -3.5 versus Arizona State. Arizona State's only got one win on the season. They are not even close in the upper echelon of Pac-12 teams this year. They will be good here in a couple of years once their quarterback play develops and they get a few more recruits in there. But Colorado is coming off of getting blown out and then an amazing emotional comeback loss last week. They almost pulled out. I think Colorado's rushing attack is hitting on all cylinders, and they're going to finally start using that to their advantage against Arizona State and have Colorado covering that 3.5 point spread. And then my super dog, this should be no surprise here. I should have just Cottrell just pick it for me, but I won't. I don't want to have him say it, but Maryland plus 19.5. This game is going to be much closer than than Vegas predicts. And I have Tagovailoa having a huge game and Maryland keeping it close. I see it within a 7-point game either direction. So 20 points seems a bit crazy to me. But so Superdog, Maryland plus 19.5. That's what I got.
So are you going full-fledged upset alert? Are you picking Maryland to win the game outright, Alex? That's all I need.
So I have them as my super dog just because I'm not as confident as I am about that Washington State beating UCLA this week. And for the sake of our listeners, I would like to put some money in their pockets. But in the back of my brain, I really wanted to put Maryland winning this week on my upset pick. But again, I want to make our listeners some money. So Washington State plus 3.5 for upset alert against UCLA.
That didn't answer the question, really, though.
Picks
aside.
It's deflect.
We're dancing. We're dancing.
Who won?
No, I got Maryland plus 19.5. That's what I bet in real life. That's what I'm putting on the show. Like I said, if Ohio State wins, if Maryland loses this game, I'm gonna be bold enough to say, and if you can't tell, I'm very bold always. But if Maryland loses this game, they are going to play so well they will become ranked. That is what I see coming out of Maryland this weekend. I'm just saying.
Okay. I'll take it. I guess
it's the Kool-Aid thing all over again. He keeps you hanging until like the very, very end, and then he says something crazy. I'm like, nope, I'm out. Can't do it.
We go all the way bold, and then we just can't hop that last fence. Like I'll take it. I guess that's how they get down in Eugene. I mean, I get it.
But as a bonus pick, look out for Wake Forest plus 21 versus Clemson. That seems like a little steep. Wake Forest has been playing decent. Clemson, not so much. So 21 points seems like a bit big. That's kind of a bonus little pick that I've been eyeing myself.
All right. Well, that is it for week 7. Anybody have any closing remarks? Anything you want to say before we go?
No. I mean, we got like 8 minutes before games really start to kick off here. And
Yep.
Ohio State, Maryland is also on at noon. So I'm going to have to toggle back and forth between watching Ohio State and Maryland and watching the Red River rivalry. Why are they doing this to me? I'm a traditionalist. I do like those rivalry games being at noon. But Ohio State and Maryland, you should have looked out for me, made this game at 3:30, and I would have been a lot happier. But I guess I'll take it. Alex got us on upset alert, even though he doesn't want to say it. So I guess I gotta watch the Buckeyes. Take care of business.
I feel like the group chat might have the potential to be very spicy here in about 10, 15 minutes. So I hope everybody enjoys their Saturdays. Hope whatever team you're pulling for wins. We will be back again next Saturday. Huge week coming up next week. Enjoy this one, but we next week is going to be a fun show for 2 very, very big reasons. Both these gentlemen here have enormous football games next week. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to sharing it with everybody, especially these 2 guys. Again, if you can, like, share, repost, do whatever you can to help us get the word about the show. We're continuing to grow. So everybody that does watch and listen and comment, thank you, everybody. Gentlemen, thank both of you as always. Week 7, coast to coast. We are out of here. Enjoy your day, everybody.